Hello and welcome. I'm Brentan and I'll be sharing with you today a practice of evening forward folds. So these are ideal if you want to unwind after a long day, or if you're looking for a yoga practice that can help you fall to sleep with a little bit more ease and a sense of calmness and relaxation. And so you can do this just before bed or any time in the evening after you get home from work, or kind of when it starts to get a little bit darker around you. And for practice, I'm going to recommend us to use a block or a book from home and a bolster or a big pillow. And also, let's make sure that you feel good seated on the floor. If that's not something that's comfortable for you, I would do a different evening practice than this one. And I can talk about ways to make that more comfortable on you as well. So our first pose tonight is going to be a child's pose. Now, if you get sore under your ankles, under your knees, or right in your hip creases, feel free to take a blanket or some padding where you need it. And then you can take your knees as wide apart as feels good. Walk yourself forward. Gently begin to slide your body in two directions, your heels and your sitting bones and your pelvis behind you, your rib cage, your shoulders, your arms, and your forehead towards the front of the mat. And take big, full breaths in and out through the nose if you can, and really fill up the torso like it was a balloon. Side child's pose. You can lift the forehead up, push down with your hands, and gently walk your hands and torso over to the right. And it just goes where it goes. Release the forehead back down, release both of your shoulders, release your pelvis back down to your heels, and then gently use your left hand to push the floor down and away from you. This time focus on breathing into the space of the left side body. So from the left hip all the way through the left armpit, as you take big, full inhales, you should feel that side of your body inflate evenly. And to the left. The sitting bones draw straight back towards the heel bone. So there's not a sense of side stretching in the pelvis. The pelvis is rooted the same way that it was in child's pose in the forward version. So that's how you get that nice long spine. And that's also how the low back stays nice and neutral during these lateral side bends. So really supportive. And we can walk forward. Walk the heart up onto the heels, and let's move into our Yogi squat or Malasana. So take some time to adjust, just letting the torso come upright, and feel free to move as slowly as you'd like to. Now, if the heels don't come down to the floor, go ahead, keep them lifted, and roll up a blanket, snuggle it underneath the heels. Or take your yoga block and sit on your yoga block so your pelvis can be more lifted. Sometimes that lets the heels ground with a little bit more certainty. And we'll just kind of hold this pose. Take the hands together at the heart. Draw your arms into your legs. Draw your legs into your arms. And now reach your heart forward to your thumbs. Let's not focus on tucking or scooping or rounding the tail underneath us. Let's instead focus on freeing the sitting bones away from the backs of the knees, pressing the frontal hip bones forward, and lengthening out through the back ribs, through the skull. Now, if it feels good for you here, you can start to walk forward and allow the upper body to hang freely towards the floor. Keep grounding your feet down. Push the floor down and away from you. Breathe into the whole back body. From here, let's take a seat. We'll stay in external hip rotation, Baddha Konasana. If the pelvis doesn't feel upright here, and you'll notice that because you'll feel like you're being tugged behind you, then sit up onto something, even a bolster or the block should suffice, just enough to get the pelvis tilted upright. If the pelvis isn't tilted upright, this is not the version of this pose to pursue. The version of the pose to pursue for you would be lying flat on your back with the legs like this. So when you're ready for a forward fold, if your pelvis is allowing you that movement, you're going to start to let the sitting bones go down to the floor behind you and stretch the front pelvis forward. Now, if your pelvis is really used to that movement and can do it like without even trying, and you're overly flexible like that, then mind that and work on the integration. And we'll hold this pose for about 7 breaths. This is actually where I like my block. And I've been working with this pose long enough that it usually feels okay for me to take my forehead down to a block. Now, if you're newer to this pose, that's gonna seem like the farthest thing from your realm of possibilities. So if that's you, your hands are up here or just lifting up. Perfect version of the pose. Slow down the movement of your eyes and your eyelids. So we're also training the mental space for sleep and for absolute rest. So if your mind seems to be kind of racing, start to take fuller, deeper exhales through the mouth. Start to free up the torso from all of the little knots of feelings that are kept and stored in there. So if you're carrying any stories or emotions from your day, you'll find them as little bits of emotion kind of stuck in places in the abdomen and the chest. And just start to breathe on the exhale like you wanted to free up your entire torso. And gently we'll begin to come up out of this fold. If we can teach ourselves to feel good in forward folds and then hold them a little bit longer, that's when we really start to see the restorative benefits of the posture, how they really start to calm down the system from the inside out so that sleep feels so natural and so easy for us. We can move the legs now. Sometimes assistance with the hands is nice. We can move the legs now into Upphavista Konasana, which is our wide-legged forward bent position. So you just kind of stretch the legs out, and everybody does it kind of differently. So explore that. Again, rise the pelvis up onto something. You should feel like the pelvis can tilt forward. Not a lot, it doesn't need to be a lot, but it needs to be enough that you can balance your weight on your sitting bones and activate your core all the way up through your spine. So there's a slight sense of engagement for you here, and that engagement is actually very empowering. Makes us feel like we have an understanding of how to hold ourselves in this world, which is a very empowering position for us to be in. So we want to roll the legs so the kneecaps face up. They could even roll in a little bit here, but the tendency is going to be that they want to roll open, which we want to just resist a little bit. Now, again, work in whatever works for you. You can walk yourself back if your spine is pulling back and you're not in that upright pelvis position. If your pelvis is slanting back, don't try to move forward because your pelvis isn't going with you. So go forward with the pelvis if you can, and you just walk again into the space that makes sense for you. I'm gonna grab my block again. And so if you're walking forward at any amount, what's also nice about being at home is that anything around you can be a yoga prop, kind of. And so if you need something that's higher away from the floor, find something for you to stack yourself up on and drop your forehead down to. So one of our jobs here, especially what will keep us interested and not having the mind race, is if we try to elongate the breath every time we take a new inhale. And that will keep us actively participating in each breath as it comes. We want to try to stay here long enough to elicit some type of relaxation response from some place inside of us. That might feel like the legs kind of just soften just a little bit, like they become more at home where they are. It might feel like you can just soften your upper back, or that in some way a weight that you knew about or you didn't know about has been released. Gently walk up. And we can move into more of the traditional hamstring stretches now that the hips have been plied open and played with just a little bit. So Janu Sirsasana. We'll start one hamstring at a time. Lengthen the left leg out, draw the right foot into tree pose beside it. And this one will take the traditional version, which involves just ever so slightly a little twist. So we'll get the benefits of lengthening out through the side body as well as opening through the back of the leg. So stretch your left heel as far away from your left sitting bone as it will naturally go. Your leg might be like this. Because you want, again, the pelvis to be upright. So when you have that, I start just by tenting and trying to ground both legs evenly into the floor energetically, draw them into the pelvis, and then ground the sitting bones down evenly. So I know then that energetically my legs are in an arrangement, a conversation. Keeping that, lift out through the core, twist so the heart kind of melts over the center of the right kneecap. And then we can begin our slow descent over the leg. And in these forward folds, even the back of the body should be getting really long here. So we are lengthening the vertebral discs away from each other near the back skin. We just don't want the bend to originate with the back curl. We want the folds to originate with the pelvis tilting forward over the left leg bone and gently stretching the left sitting bone away from the back of the left knee without letting the left leg compromise its muscular integrity. So there's a certain point where we overstretch, and when we're in the moment of overstretch, our muscles are no longer able to contract or integrate the way that they're intended to. And the other side. Start to feel a general softening of the front of your body. So now we're closing ourselves in. It's almost like we're shutting the book of our lives closed for the evening. And so we want to start to feel ourselves get really quiet in all ways. So it always starts with the lift and the integration. And once you feel that, then you can draw forward into the folds, Remember all of your tricks. You can sit the pelvis up onto something. You can bend into this knee. And it's so simple. You just pay attention to the breath. And especially if your intention with your breath is to get it slow, steady, and even. And so that every time you breathe, it actually feels easier and fuller in your body. And that will tell you how you need to adjust your physical body in order to maintain that type of breath. And then practicing yoga is really easy because you learn how to consult with yourself about what your work is. We can come back to upright. Draw the right leg in, nice and easy. And our last seated forward bend tonight will be Paschimottanasana. So intense stretch of the west. We'll put both sides of Janu Sirsasana together. So my personal favorite way of doing this is to take my bolster underneath my knees. So just for a reference point, my hamstrings and the back of my body is about open enough that I can have straight legs and have heart down here, but not quite. I've been forward folding every day for about 6 years. So just so you have some type of reference point for where you are, you then therefore, if you are much tighter than me, might step your feet in more, which will relieve the load on the hamstrings more, or find a bigger pillow. You might also, again, try to assist yourself by lifting the pelvis up onto something so that the legs go down from the pelvis, and that's an easier position for them. This turns my forward fold into a very restorative version, which I very much appreciate. So grounding through the heels, you'll attract the pinky toes back towards the body energetically, and just let the legs soften into the floor, into something else, or wherever you might be. And if your legs are really bent, hug behind your thighs and take your heart and your knees together. So if we can get our heart and our knees together, that should be a very soft place for us. And that means everything in between the heart and the knees is also together. It's not a big gap. I have a baggy shirt on, but it's not like there's a big gap there. All pieces of flesh from the pelvis all the way to the heart are touching each other on the front body, the thigh and the chest. So you know your hips are in flexion, the backs of the hamstrings are working this way. That's the reversal energy of all of your chair sitting all day, so that should feel really nice. And then the last piece of this pose for me is to lengthen the hands forward. You might also enjoy a strap around your feet with a little tug on it. And to draw the chin into the chest, kind of puff my upper back just a little bit so I can start to feel the sensation ride the entire backside of the body and not just the hamstrings. So from the back of the heel, I'm trying to just get all pieces of my body connected in space in a way where I can feel from the back of my ankle all the way through the backside of the body and all the way through the back of the head into the front of my skull. Everything feels like it's stretching evenly. And it doesn't happen all at once, so there's just tiny adjustments that are being made moment by moment. Everything on the front of the body goes super duper soft. Let's begin to walk up. And our final pose tonight, in preparation for our evening rest, will be a modified Shavasana on our sides. So if you have that pillow at home, I recommend putting it in between the legs. And you could really do this pose up too, and like put your pillow up here and a blankie and all kinds of stuff, and you might just hang out there in a restorative fetal position for as long as you might like. But I'll just take a short one with you. So I'm gonna curl up and use my bottom arm this time as a pillow because it feels okay to lengthen it overhead for me. So if you're not that way, use a pillow. Just rest my right hand down to the floor, and to give a folded version to this, I'm actually gonna kind of droop my right shoulder down as well, so that my heart is facing more down to the floor. Just let my left hand go into a place where it feels good above me. Release the eyes to close. And you gently want to release the work of the legs and pelvis, the whole spine. Start to observe any piece of you that's still looking to move or desires movement. And just notice it openly. See if that doesn't create a little bit more softness and ease in your whole form. And let's let our whole skeleton rest deep into the floor for another 15 seconds. We'll gently start to deepen the breath. Start a little bit of movement, maybe rocking the pelvis left to right. And then rooting through the right hand. Keep your skull dropping to the floor as you press up. You can move the bolster out to the side. Come to a gentle seated position. And today we'll meet in Sukhasana, easy seated position, where we are hands at the heart and eyes gently closed. Thank you for joining for our evening forward folds tonight. I hope you have a wonderful, restful night of sleep. Namaste.